Matias je tukaj v sklopu Skandinavske pomladi, v bistvu je njen vrhunc. S tem projektom hočemo nekako poudarjati pomen pop kulture na tem knjižnem področju za kvalitetno knjižno produkcijo, predvsem dobrega pripovedništva, ki ga Skandinavci definitivno imajo. In se mi zdi, da definitivno Matias je izjemen pripovednik, tako da smo lahko zelo srečni, da je prišel. So, welcome Matias. Perhaps before we get to your novels, let me say that you're a full-time visual artist. So maybe you could tell us a bit about your work as an artist.
Yeah. I divide my time, or I work mostly as a visual artist. My plan is kind of to keep the visual art that I do very minimal, very dry, kind of ungenerous, not very friendly to the audience. My visual art is not so much about the audience as about the kind of gesture of making it. And so I try to push all the kind of the fun, the burlesque, grease, and the ideas and the surplus and everything else into the writing. So that's how I define it. Kind of keep it plain on the art part, and then open up the doors on the book part. But underneath both of the activities is kind of the same attitude or the same sort of urgency. So that's a common thing, but it takes on very different forms.
I have to say that you're an incredible wordsmith, and that I feel that that's also a part not only of your novels but also of your art. Like all your exhibitions have very interesting names, and are maybe the words are also part of your art.
Yeah, I mean the show titles are sometimes probably the things that are closest to my books. There's this kind of snappiness that I'm after. But I mean the titles of the works, they're always just called what they are. You know, if I make a jug, then it's called untitled brackets jug #1 or something like that. So it's very plain in that sense. But I don't know, the word, the interest and interest for just word plays, just fooling around with words is actually my reason for starting to write. My first novel was first just long lists of word plays, basically, and little one-liner, slapsticky quotes, or just little ideas and notes.
And how did your novels acquire action then, and three-dimensional characters?
Because I decided around 98, I decided to quit being an artist because I didn't see any future for myself on the art scene. So I thought, but what do I do with all these ideas that are kind of piling up? So I decided to just string them out in a narrative. So I made a structure that kind of looked like a novel, or like a dramatic structure. But in the first place, it was more or less like an excuse to just pour these ideas out. And also the characters were more or less just carriers or vehicles for these ideas. So actually, they're more like ideas with two legs than really literary characters, I think.
But hasn't that changed with your with you acquiring more and more experience writing novels? Because I feel that when I compare the Coca-Cola company and Unfun, that Unfun is much more built as a classic, epic storytelling novel.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the critics that were unsure about Coca-Cola, if that had really literary qualities, they were happy when Unfun came in, because they said, "Oh, now we can see that the writer has matured and he's using language in a proper or different way." And I don't know if that's a good thing, but yeah, it has matured. It's become less and less fun to write, more and more difficult, and it looks more and more like literature. Right? But the kind of urge and joy that it was to write the first one is completely gone. Whenever I sit down now and try to write in the same way, it's impossible.
And also you use provocation as an artistic tool in your novels. And I also feel that that your strategies of using provocation has changed. Actually, like through every novel that you wrote.
Yeah, I mean, provocation is a very to use provocation as an artistic tool is a very cliched notion of how the artist should or could work. So more than provocation, it's been almost like an image of provocation. You know, the books have been making a theme out of provocation as an artistic tool more than actually being provocative. So I think if you look at the books in that way, they're not really provocative because they are so tongue-in-cheek. But as we talked about earlier today, also one of my techniques has been to take have like a jokey approach to kind of nasty or dark themes, and then shave away all of the jokes in a way. So you're not really sure when it comes down to it if this is supposed to be laughed at, if it's wrong to laugh at it. You know, so it's almost like the joke without the joke, right?
And still, for instance, your first two novels, they really start with big provocations, like the pornographic scene in the first one and the cucumber scene in the second one. And I feel that in the third one, the opening scene is more narrative than provocative.
Yeah, I mean that's true. But the provocation that lies in the third one is the kind of what seems like a misogynist monologue from the first person narrator. It says a lot of more or less degrading things about women, but and then it turns out that the first person is a woman. But the statements about women is actually just samples. It's just cut from Andrea Dworkin's book called The Intercourse. She was one of the kind of hardliner feminists from the 70s, 80s. So it's actually her words on the problematics of being a woman.
Yeah, that was also going to be one of my main questions. You list a lot of what I feel was underground artists and philosophers, and are they always made up, or are they always borrowed from somebody real?
It's a wild mix of existing stuff that I add my own stuff onto, or stuff that I just invent. And sometimes I forget myself what is which. But yeah, it's just a mix of actual characters, invented characters, actual titles, invented titles. My own theories are, more often than not just cut out of Wikipedia or the most kind of obvious internet sites, Yeah, so there's a lot of I steal like as a raven, as we say in Norway, and I mix it into the narrative, and I kind of lose track of it myself. So I very often I can't remember if this was something I invented or something I stole, which means that I've stole it properly then.
Because one of my favorite characters of yours is Macht, who steals ideas from the underground and makes a really good living from selling them to corporations and pop culture. So is he your most autobiographic character?
It is a self-portrait. No, not really. I mean.
No tattoos.
No tattoos. Yeah, but of course, his character is quite similar to the role you can have as an artist. Wherever, I mean, the art world works in the way that, or has historically worked in the way that the initiatives that has tried to break art down, to destroy art, to just make what art becomes, what drives art forward again. You know, so it's a very kind of destructive progression. And yeah, I saw similarities between that and the way money is able to kind of pull up to into itself whatever is in its way. You know? So it's kind of an analogy between the institutional art system and the money system. And of course, sometimes I don't steal in the same way when I'm making art, but the way you can just, as an artist, when you're in some certain position, the way you can take any object, any meaning, any material, and then sell it to rich people is quite an absurd situation. So in that sense, you know, I'm turning garbage into gold.
Maybe one more question on that theme. The jokes at the end of Macht und Rebell,
Yeah.
are they yours or part of?
That's
I especially like the ones why beer is better than retarded people.
yeah. It's that's from the internet.
Okay. Nobody critiqued you for telling old jokes then?
No, not really. No. But I got a lot of critique for that ending, you know. So a lot of people in Norway said that it would be impossible to make a more nihilistic and awful ending to such an awful book.
I like it.
Yeah.
I understood it. So, when we wrote this invitation, we described your novels as kind of houses of mirrors, where the shape of your body gets distorted in some way, and again in some way, just because it's grotesque, it emphasizes certain features that you have, and you can see them clearly, and at the same time make fun of them. Would you agree with that assessment in some way?
Yeah, it's a pretty picture. A friend of mine, he's the old bass player in a punk band called Turbo Negro. He has like very a Norwegian punk band. He has very to the point like pictures of the world, and his latest is like the modern, the contemporary person. The perfect image of the contemporary person is someone who sits naked, masturbating in front of a shattered mirror. So that's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. So, I have another really provocative question. The little child in Coca-Cola, his teachers are not able to do something with him because of the way he is. Did you ever think about how you would function with a child like that?
Yeah, that was actually that was one of the challenges with that character. The idea was to take Simple, who is his father, who is like a kind of an absolute misanthropic rebel, you know, against everything and against and for like disrupting every kind of convention. And then he gets a kid that he can't control. So what does he do with that? How does he relate to that? And yeah, at the time I was actually in a personal situation where this would be this was the actual questions that I was posing to myself. So yeah, I've tried.
Can I ask you basically a fan question? At what time do your novels take place? And I know that you list, you narrate in Martin Rebel that it's like 6 years from when it's written, and I'm kind of guessing that Anfang should be kind of 10 years because still Rob Zombie is still a fresh face on that slasher scene, and I'm guessing that Danka Savetas is not yet in a wheelchair. Castellaneta,
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good guess. I didn't think about the timeline when I was writing Coca-Cola, but Martin Rebel was deliberately late, like 5 to 6 years in the future. And the last one was, I thought, of a near future scenario, and in the beginning it had more, it had even more kind of sci-fi elements. There were references to kind of technological gadgets that didn't exist, but I took that away, so it's just a very, very vague kind of idea of a near future.
So that machine, that exercise machine, where
it was more of that kind of stuff. There's an exercising machine where the people are kind of sunk down into a big bucket of some sort of gel that gives you sort of total resistance. But you can breathe it, you know. So you're just sitting in the middle of that gel and moving around and exercising.
In Martin Rebel, you write that being a Nazi is the only way that you can truly push people away forever, because it's the only ideology that will never get fashionable. Do you still agree with that, or have you found from that time a better way to push people away?
No, I think that's kind of a thing that sticks. But I mean, obviously, it's not very dangerous to play around with it. In Germany, I had some problems because of the imagery in the books. They are actually not allowed to print swastikas and Nazi symbols. So it was a big. They had to go big rounds with lawyers and stuff like that before they did it. Because the thing is that if a person, whoever reports the book for being spreading Nazist material, then they have to pull it back until the case has been into court. So that's effectively just censorship that could be made by whoever. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see Nazism having become more popular in the last 5 years. I think that's a good way of becoming unpopular, to turn into a Nazi.
So, can you maybe tell us more about the reception of your work in different countries, and also in Norway and in other countries?
Yeah, in Norway it was very divided. It was a small literary sensation when the first book came out, because it didn't really look like any other thing at the time, and it was so kind of outgoing in its language and its swear words and its themes and everything. But it was very divided because some connoisseurs, they were not sure about the literary qualities of it, and they thought the characters were one-dimensional, and they didn't really see it as a project, but read it as one-to-one. You know, here's another book that we're gonna judge on after the same criteria as all other books. You know, and then you, of course, would find a lot of problems. But it gained sort of a following among young people. It started to go around by itself in high school circles, university circles, stuff like that. And becoming very popular for different reasons. I mean, 15-year-old kids think it's just funny for the entertainment of it to read about this crazy people and this stuff. And but it's also been pulled into the universities as a part of the education to show, you know, tendencies in Norwegian literature, and that's also happened in Denmark, I know, and in Germany. In Germany, the translation was the reception was more what do you call it? Unison, like it was more collective, unified them of it being good, basically. And in other countries, it's hard to know. I've got good reviews, but I don't know anything about kind of the general audience. Yeah.
And in which countries are you translated
to? Finnish, German, Danish, Slovenian. There's one in Russian. There's Spanish, Italian, Lithuanian, not English.
Not English?
Yeah. Well, they translated Unfund into English, but after they had read the translation, they cancelled it. So I have the translation as a Word file in English. But they are very particular about copyright problems in the English-speaking world. Very afraid of lawsuits when it comes to all the sampling and all this stealing of material. That's one. And also in Unfun I use an actual character, which is Dan Castellaneta. He's the guy who has the voice of Homer Simpson in the Simpsons, the cartoon. He comes to Norway to help the protagonists to read in the voiceover on the computer game that they're making. And I've put him in a wheelchair, and I don't really treat him too well during the course of the book. And they were very afraid of him being a Hollywood figure and having Hollywood lawyers, and if he wanted to, and he felt that this was like defamation of character, he could bring down the whole publishing house, So they didn't dare to go through with it, or at least that's what they said. Yeah, so that's my English success story.